Welcome to the Startup to Exit podcast, where we will bring you world-class entrepreneurs and VCs to share their hard-earned success stories and secrets. This podcast has been brought to you by TIE Seattle. TIE is a global nonprofit that focuses on fostering entrepreneurship. TIE Seattle offers a range of programs, including the Go Vertical Startup Creation Weekend, TIE Entrepreneur Institute, and the TIE Seattle Angel Network. We encourage you to become a TIE member so you can gain access to these great programs. To become a member, please visit www.seattle.tie.org.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. I am Gowri Shankar. I'm on the board of TIE Seattle and a serial entrepreneur based in Seattle also. It's a pleasure to start our first podcast. I'm doing this with my co-board member, Shirish Nadkarni, a serial entrepreneur and a two-time author. And his latest book, Winner Take All, is on marketplaces. And we are excited to have our first guest today, and Shirish will introduce him. Shirish, great that you've written two books now. Now you've become a serial author, not only a serial entrepreneur. Thank you, Shirish. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gowri. Hello, everyone. My name is Shirish Nadkarni. I'm a serial entrepreneur and board member of TIE Seattle. We are very pleased to welcome Nick Huzar to our show. Nick is the co-founder and former CEO of OfferUp for more than a decade. He is currently operating as a board director, brand evangelist, and as an advisor to the CEO on strategic projects. He's also raised a ton of money, over $380 million in financing from some leading investors like A16Z. And OfferUp is a huge platform for used goods. It turns out that 1 in 5 people over the age of 14 have used OfferUp. And OfferUp now facilitates billions of dollars in transactions every single month. So that's a little bit of background about OfferUp and Nick. So welcome, Nick.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to this conversation.
Great. So let's start by having you tell us a little bit about OfferUp and its founding. How did you come up with the idea, especially given that when you started OfferUp, Craigslist was totally the dominant 800-pound gorilla in this market. And as you know, once you create network effects, it's very hard to displace somebody who's the marketplace leader.
Yeah, well, I think like most entrepreneurs, I believe that you have to kind of have this passion for a problem and you can't get it out of your head. And so for me, I had to just happen to be where I was in my life. I had done startups before. In fact, the startup I had before this, I was sleeping on an air mattress. Like, they're a lot of work in the early days. So I had no plans on starting another company. But my wife and I bought a house and we had a room full of stuff. Most people have like that junk drawer in your house. We had one of those too. But I also had a room full of stuff. And when she said she was pregnant, I go, this is awesome. And I go into dad mode and I'm going to stand there. I'm in the doorway of this room and I'm going to sell all this stuff. And I'm looking at this room saying, this is going to take me forever to clear this room out using Craigslist. And I looked down at my phone, which is like my first iPhone was like the 2nd gen iPhone. And I just kept going like this. I'm like, why can't I just take a picture? Like, I have this device in my pocket now. And if you're familiar with life pre-smartphone, the option on Craigslist was like 15 minutes, right? You had to take a picture of a camera. You had to tether it up to a piece, computer. Then you had to upload it. And so I just thought like, I think that part could be easier. And then I think I closed the door. I didn't even post anything on Craigslist. And I went about my life. I just kind of forgot about it. But it kept nagging at me for months on months on months. And so I'm kind of out there looking for a job because I left my previous startup. And here I have my wife that's pregnant. I have no income and she's working at Microsoft. So I didn't want to be a deadbeat dad. I'm like, I have to get a job. But after about 5 months, and I was already kind of sketching this stuff out, and I kept thinking about, I said, well, I think we're all going to have these smartphones. And I think the cameras are going to get better. And I think we can look at the problem and reimagine it. And so if you look at Craigslist, it was built in an era of the PC, which made sense. That's the tools they leveraged. But if you look at the smartphone, you can take all of that complexity and make it far more efficient. So my belief was we would have these devices, we could leverage the cameras, we could leverage the maps, we could leverage payments, we could do all these other things and remove a lot of friction. So my belief in the early days was because of this platform shift, we could rethink local commerce as we know it. Now, most folks in Seattle thought we were nuts. You're like, you're crazy. You're trying to disrupt Craigslist. Nobody's been able to do that. And my view was, I don't care if we convert a single Craigslist user, because I did a lot of homework and talked to a lot of people. And my conclusion was there's a lot of people that just don't use it that much because it's not worth their time, or they're scared of the trust and safety, especially women. Women were very scared of using Craigslist. And so I just felt like, man, we got to go all in on mobile, and we got to be the simplest and most safest way to do local transactions. And so we just built the whole company around that, that belief. And I also like to say at the end of the day, yes, we are definitely a secondhand marketplace, very dominant in that. Long term, though, that was never the vision. My vision was to become the platform for local commerce, full stop. Because you think about it, where's all the stuff going? Like, where's all the Amazon stuff going? And what's happening is value is growing all around us. Like, our homes are actually getting bigger. We're actually having less kids. A quarter of the US population with 2-car garages can't even park in their garages anymore. And so that's what I want to get after, is like, I want to remove a lot of friction and do it as simply as we can. And as a result, we should unlock value locally. And that was the belief 10 years ago. It's still the belief I have today.
Nick, I love the story about sleeping on air mattress. I still advise young entrepreneurs, you're going to run out of liking ramen noodles and air mattress. So you better have a plan that involves eating real food and real mattress. So I love that story.
Yeah.
You and Shirish have a common thread that I'm just picking up on. And you both pivoted on mobile. Shirish, you did it for email, right? After your experience with Hotmail, you said, hey, I'll do email. And you pivoted, although he was in a pre-smartphone era, the BlackBerry era, for those who may remember on the podcast. And this, you pivoted on what was the ubiquitous nature of smartphone. Both were, hey, if I give information on the devices you'll carry, right? At that point, even though Craigslist was the 800-pound gorilla, people had used it for very specific points of interest, not for, hey, I just got to sell this, that. They hadn't come to that point yet. When in the early days, did you see the momentum as soon as you introduced it as an app? That because it's still the app itself, the app economy itself was growing. So now, what was the inflection you saw in OfferUp saying this is real? There's more for entrepreneurs out there because they all need an inflection point to kind of tell themselves, hey, this is the real thing. And sometimes they don't get it, or sometimes they don't see it. What was yours in your case at OfferUp?
Yeah, I mean, I think always in the early days, the first chapter is always product market fit. And so, we took a year, me and my co-founder, and I think we found another kid who basically, he had like 5 apps in the App Store. And we had to talk to his parents about helping us to code. It was hard to find iOS developers back then, by the way. So first code, by the way, when we started writing first lines of code, there was no Android phone. So it gives you an idea of where we are. So, so we're scratching and clawing and just coding 7 days a week, right? And so I helped basically design the apps, the name, the logo. I coded and designed the entire website. But keep in mind, the website was mostly a browsing experience. We used to get in these heated debates about posting on the web. And I said, no, no, we got to go to where the puck is going. Stop going. That's horse and buggy. Like, we're not doing that, right? And so I think we enable it now. Maybe a few years ago for various categories. I don't even know if we still post on the web, enable it for everybody still. But, the first year was not about scale. It was about just getting the product out. And so, early on, just keep shipping. Ship when it's ugly, and get it out to people. And so I used to harass my friends and family. Hey, play with my app. Of course, the challenge was they'd post and it just crickets, right? Nobody's on the other side buying anything. And so, there was a lot of product iteration and feedback. And I used to sit with people and, they give me feedback, but I'd say, hey, can I come over and watch you try to use the app, right? So they'll use it, and you just kind of watching and see where they get stuck, and like you have to do a lot of that, and just kind of take that feedback and iterate. Year 2 was the hardest year I think we ever went through, and that was how do you get scale. And so in our case, we really got focused on we're a local marketplace, so the number one metric in a marketplace is liquidity. Like if you post and no one buys, then it's not a very good marketplace. So we really obsessed on that. We did like a 30-mile radius around our office. We were here in Bellevue, and we said we have to win in this circle. If we don't win in this circle, then we're out of business anyhow. And so we just ran lots of experiments. Lots of them failed, and then ultimately we were very persistent and figured out ways to do that, especially leveraging Facebook and geo-targeted advertising. Like that's what really started to work for us. And we were fortunate that we were in their beta for mobile advertising. So we went from sucking wind for a long time to within like 90 days, the majority of people on Facebook on their mobile phone in Seattle had at least seen one of our ads. We were getting installs for like a dime. And so we were able to be pretty aggressive pretty early on without a lot of advertising competition. And that's what really changed for us pretty significantly. And then, we basically spent a year building product, another year figuring out gonna go to market in Seattle. And with that, then we were able to just kind of rinse and repeat throughout the rest of the country. Meanwhile, there's other competitors, by the way, that raised millions, and they launched across the nation. And of course, if one install comes from New York and your next install comes from Seattle, well, who cares? You're a local marketplace. So, I remember our team being a little freaked out at the time. I said, look, our discipline is in this circle. We have to win in this circle. And I think strategically, that's why we ultimately won, because we obsessed over liquidity. And I think, the whole user experience from the time I sign up to the time I'm engaging, like we really obsessed over that, shopping experience. Even comparing it to, say, Craigslist. I always thought Craigslist, even to this day, is weird. Like imagine walking into a Nordstrom's and all you see is the tags with all the text on it. That's what shopping like Craigslist is. Versus OfferUp was designed to be like shopping at a Nordstrom's. Like you look at the cool items and then you dig further for I just felt like they had it all backwards. And so I think those two things are what led to our success, the product experience, and then how we moved to market.
So how did you get around the empty marketplace problem? Because you need to have some critical mass, right, before people start really transacting. So did you, for example, publish your own used goods to kind of create a sense of a marketplace? What are some of the tricks that you used in the early days?
Yeah, we did it all. So I would go buy stuff. So imagine the early days and you see like 5 items being posted. I get so excited. Like somebody actually posted it on our marketplace. So I would go buy it, but I never told you I worked at OfferUp. So I would walk up and say, hey, Shirish, thanks for selling me your chair. All my friends are using this thing. It's the best thing ever. Complete BS. Like nobody was using this, right? I just kind of like faked it till I admit it. So then I'd buy the chair and I'd come back to our office. At the time, our office was like 400 square feet, pretty small. And I had all this stuff in there. So imagine like 5 guys coding and just stuff everywhere. That's what it was like. And then I'd repost the chair back on OfferUp, right? Because I'm like, so I'm like, I didn't have, so we did a lot of the little hacky things. Those don't really move the flywheel, but they teach you a lot, right? You're like, oh, that sucked. And so I got to make that better. And there's a lot of tweaks like that you do in the early days. And eventually you get a lot of those kinks out. And even today, we're always thinking about how we can make it better. But you do a lot of that in the early days. Ultimately, again, it's about concentrating. It's like, think of it like a magnifying glass, right? You take a magnifying glass out in a hot summer day and you want to set something on fire. Not like I've done this, but I have. And you really want to focus that harness the power of that sun to really get something to light on fire. That's what we did in markets all around the country. And so, yeah, like say the first time you get an install in LA, not that great, but if you hit it hard enough and concentrated enough, you're gonna get enough. Like you'll get enough items coming, enough engagement, and then eventually that thing is think of it as like lighting the field on fire, right? So we got very, very good at doing that. And, again, it's all about liquidity though. And so we didn't have to do all those marketplace hacky things that we did in Seattle and all the other markets. We didn't have to do that because we already understood how fast we could get people in and start to make the product experience work for them.
Got it. So you started this in Seattle, and let's talk about raising money in the early days, right? Because now you have the flywheel's starting to move, so you got to achieve scale, so you needed money. In my mind, you were in Seattle, not known for major marketplaces at that point. We had Amazon, but they were not in local commerce, right? Amazon was still early days. They're evolving from books to other things. And then Craigslist, eBay, all those guys were, I mean, Silicon Valley was much more location-wise better suited to start an OfferUp, right, than Seattle. And you also had, theoretically, in the minds of the investors, an incumbent so big called Craigslist, even though none of them had used it, I'm sure. None of them bothered to ever go on Craigslist. After you said, hey, have you ever used Craigslist? No. Then they quickly go in and check it. What's on Craigslist now?
It's not the core demo. No.
Yeah. So how did you raise money in the early days? What metric you showed the investor that you talked about two things, right? You talked about the circle. I want to win the circle, and you all these hacks. What metric in the early days you showed the investor saying, "Hey, this is going to work"? That's when the investor said, "Yeah, we'll take a bet on you," because the odds of you making from the money raising standpoint was harder in my mind than your business working. Your business had a good chance of working, but raising money in this town in those days was a tough proposition. So what do you do there? What was
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of multiple things. So for one, I felt fortunate we have some really amazing angels that supported OfferUp early on in Seattle, and a bunch of them I think believed in me and my team even without any metrics. Like, you don't have any metrics year one. You're just launching a product. And so, we were able to raise a few $100,000 from some local angels. And that was enough for us to kind of cobble our way to kind of get a basic product out there, but not a lot of growth, not a lot of scale. And you're right, I think we are definitely more of a Silicon Valley style company. I think Seattle is a wonderful place to raise capital for, say, more enterprise or SaaS type products, but you don't see a lot of consumer companies in Seattle. And so I think the challenge, of course, with the consumer is often real revenue scale is deferred, right? You have to get an audience growing versus monetizing early. And I had feedback, by the way, and I won't name names, but from a local investor that said, well, you should just charge $1 a post. I'm sitting there in the meeting. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. Why would I put a kink in the hose? Like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. And then, of course, the response was to demonstrate revenue traction. I'm like, well, that sounds great. As a VC, you would say that, but to grow a marketplace, that makes no sense, right? And so, you name it, I pitched every institution in this town multiple times. We got rejected from Techstars twice, by the way. We've been pretty much rejected. Every major kind of institutional investor rejected OfferUp. So again, we were fortunate they had enough angels that we were able to somewhat survive, on that. I also think, I knew fundraising was hard. I've been in this town for a while, but going through it again, even back then was extremely challenging. And so, we went for 2 years before we raised our Series A. I think most people would have tapped out. I had at least a product out there, but here I am now. I don't have an income. Even the first money we raised, I barely.
And the baby was already on.
I was a father now, right? and my wife was working. So I told her, I said, "There's either two ways this is going to go. Either this is going to fail miserably, and you're going to resent me, or it's going to work, and you're going to be super proud. But there's no middle ground in this." And so luckily, my wife's pretty happy now. Like that's worked out. But then, so that's kind of how it was in the early days. Was very starvation-esque, and especially anyone that's a dad that's starting a company, you realize that like you have a child here, you want to take care of your family. Like you don't, you worry about that, and in the early days. But so I just was very open with my wife, and we'd have a lot of conversations. But I just kind of took her on the journey with me all the time. I said, "Do you want me to stop? Do you want me to quit?" And she's like, "I think you should keep going." And so, with her blessing, I started getting on airplanes and going down to the Bay Area. And I just said, "Look, I have no other rocks to turn on. Look at here. I got to get out of this town." And so I did 15 trips to the Bay Area in 12 months. And what I did was I had a guy on our team that was helping us to do growth hacky stuff. And I kind of made him my pre-seed sales guy. And I said, "Look, I want you to find early mobile, local marketplace investors in the Bay Area on LinkedIn. And then I want to fill out this spreadsheet. And then I want you to take this message. And I want you to log in as me and tell them I'm down there having coffee or whatever and set up these meetings for me." And so he did that. And it was all kind of BS, by the way. I didn't have any trips down there. So you get this message like, I'm in town next week. I'd love to meet with you. And so I would do that. I would go down, I'd have 3 meetings. I didn't want to spend any money. I'd stay in my buddy's guest room. So one of my college buddies, I stayed in his guest room. Then I'd have a few more meetings. I'd fly home. And so I did that, like I said, about 15 times in a year. And it's such a joke because one of my good friends, I still see him every year and we laugh. I'm like, remember when I wanted to stay in your guest room that one time? It ended up being 15 times. But through that, I was able to network and ultimately connect with an investor that led our Series A. And so I think that was just about my learning lesson from that was just sheer persistence. Like I was just not going to stop. And luckily that had panned out. And once we raised our Series A, that gave us a lot more scale. And then ultimately, Andreessen and Horowitz led our B, and that really kicked things up because we had a lot more capital and they're a very reputable firm. And so then that really started to put things in high gear. But yeah, by the time our Series A was funded, we had about $350 left in our bank account.
That's incredible that you really brought it down to the wire. One of the things that's overlooked, and Shirish and I talk to a lot of young entrepreneurs even now, is your family unit, whatever that may be, right? In your case, it was your wife and kid. In other cases, maybe other. Your family unit is as important in this journey as your developers and your co-founders. And people just kind of think of separation, right? Yeah, I got work and then I got family.
Yeah.
No, the pressure of a startup is clearly unknown for first-time entrepreneurs. And certainly for younger entrepreneurs, they just think, hey, I'm just going to work 24/7. Well, you got a baby. That's got to be fed every couple hours. So, and your wife, in your case, your wife was working. So, wow, that's an incredible journey that you went on. That's amazing that you somehow felt in you that you were going to make this thing work. And till you ran it to zero, you're going to do it. So I like that story. I like that story a lot.
And to the point, by the way, of family, I encourage anyone listening, like you take them on the journey. You don't have to tell them every intimate detail and how terrible your day went, whatever. But you need to bring them along because they are supporting you. Without that significant other that's supportive, I think it's going to be a real hard row for anybody to be an entrepreneur. And so I think it's important to share that. So when you do have a bad day, they can be empathetic, but if you're not sharing anything, it's hard for them to understand what you're going through.
Would you have started Airbnb then if this guest room thing didn't work out?
I don't know. I mean that good for Brian Chesky and that company, and that's just a phenomenal story on that one.
I know. They beat regulation and made a marketplace. That's unbelievable. Anyway, go ahead, Shirish. Sorry.
Yeah. So you started off in Seattle, and then I understand you expanded into a few other markets. But once you raised money from A16Z, did you go still market by market? Because there's lots and lots of markets in the US, or did you then go nationwide? How did you think about that strategy?
Yeah, so we were always very paranoid that somebody was going to kill us. Like we always thought Amazon would try to kill us. And so this is very could be anti-startup.
I thought they would buy you. I
don't know if Amazon buys it. I think they would just try to get information and then try to take us down.
Yeah.
But so that was always a paranoia of mine. And so I love the book Art of War. It's a phenomenal book. And when it's, when you're small, you evade and you flank and you build out territories before you come out and really pound your chest. And so what we did, we were very strategic in the US because I said, look, we got to win the biggest NFL cities. We have to get size and scale because if we get big enough, somebody's going to try to take us out for sure. And so even when Andreessen invested, you won't see a press release. And so we stayed under the wire for a long time. And they're like, hey, well, Mark's going to tweet about you. Here's our PR team. We're like, actually, can you not even put us on your website? And so what we were doing was buying time. Because we wanted to get into these markets and really build beachheads. And so another example is we intentionally didn't launch in San Francisco and New York for a long time. And so, eventually we started, making noise because Letgo entered the U.S. And they were our first kind of major competitor. And then we had to switch it. And we said, now we're changing the game. Now we're pounding our chest because I think at the time Letgo had their first, I think the first app in the App Store.
And they were Toronto based, right? They started in Toronto. Where did Letgo?
They were based. Actually, they had an office in New York.
Okay.
But they came in very aggressively with a lot of capital, and good for them. I think they deployed the right strategy to try to get a lot of scale. We had to finally switch the game because at the point, I think at that point in time, they had a press release before we did that was like $10 million in transactions, and I walk in that morning with this guy running marketing, and I said, I think we need to start to say who we are because we've had 1 billion in transactions. All right. And so let's get out there and really, make a lot of noise. So we started doing that. And then now I'm spending more time in the Bay Area. Now we're launching in the Bay Area. And I used to get a kick down there because, I'd go to these networking events and people are like, yeah, you must not be that big a deal. No one uses you down here. And I'm just laughing because I'm like, wow, you should see the metrics in LA. Like LA is a monster. LA, by the way, 1/3 of the adults in LA use OfferUp every month today.
Wow.
And LA is a huge market. So I'm glad these strategies all kind of played out because we are still, Facebook came and we didn't see them coming. And Facebook's a very sizable competitor, but we still have a lot of user growth and engagement all around the country, especially markets that we were very strategic and focusing on. So that was, I think back to the kind of the question is we definitely still went market by market, but at some point we had enough word of mouth and such scale that it kind of didn't matter, right? So sometimes we would focus on driving more supplier, more engagement in LA. Sometimes we'd say, no, we just want more installs across the US. So, now we've been installed 130 million times. So half the US population is installed OfferUp at least at one point. And so, but it's very market by market until, you get enough scale where, the economics are such that there's different strategies you can deploy. But I'd say in the early years, it was definitely market by market.
Yeah. So you launched and you decided to go after NFL cities. So you're from Seattle, so you're a Seahawks fan, I take it.
My wife is way more of a fan than I'm a fair weather fan. It's entertainment. So if they're not performing, I'll do laundry instead.
I'm a serious NFL fan because I live in Kansas City, so finally we're having our moment for 5 years. But the interesting part is, again, you drew circles, right? I'm using the NFL analogy. You drew circles. There are only X number of NFL cities, right? Once you get through, and then you eliminated San Francisco and New York in your own mind.
We just delayed it. We just delayed them. So ultimately we entered them, but it was very delayed.
Yeah. No, at the moment when you entered. And then LA did not have 2 teams then when you launched, I think. I think LA was still an open market when you guys were out. So the interesting thing is you were paranoid about your competitors, but they were going to still face the same issues that you faced, right? Because you had the issue of security and safety. You, as you said early on in the podcast, women didn't like using Craigslist, and because of security and safety. Any big competitor will also have the same thing. And your other startup, Letgo, was trying to scale. Now, along the way, you probably thought, okay, hey, we overcome the security issue, meaning you have trust in the process, which is a big part of marketplaces. You need liquidity and you need trust, right? In your case, I need to know if I clicked on something and bought it, then I know the guy isn't A, going to mug me, or B, going to show up to actually give me the stuff, even if it's not real. So you had both the issues come together at the same time. Did any city teach you more about these two than other? I'm thinking Bellevue is a fairly safe place. I don't know anything about LA or Chicago or any other place you might have launched. Did something say, hey, this is what we're going to really build into a product and make sure that our competitors can? What was the moat you try to build?
Yeah, so one of the first things we built, even before we raised our Series A, was this program we built called TrueU. And at the time, we wanted to make a statement that we cared about trust, but we didn't have a huge team. How are we going to build all this trust stuff in the system? And keep in mind, we didn't even have any users yet. but we kind of geeked out on this cool technology where you could scan a government ID, and we used a third party called Gmail to do this. And step two in the process was you took a selfie and would actually behind the scenes marry those two. And if it was a match, you could say, yes, this person is who they say they are. So we reached out to this company called Jumio at the time. We said, hey, has anyone ever done this from a mobile phone? And they were like the leader in kind of ID verification. At the time, they were doing they were doing this for casinos and like real estate companies on the desktop. So you would like hold it up to your desktop camera and it would verify. But nobody had done it on a mobile phone. And we said, well, we want to do this on a mobile phone. And if you go through this True You program, you get a badge that says you're a True You member. Well, of course, in the early days, wait, who's going to do this? Like, it's early days in smartphones. What is this app, OfferUp? And you want me to put my government ID in? Like, you're crazy. We did it, though, because we said, look, we care about this and we want people to know. So that was kind of early, did not get a lot of adoption early on, but that was kind of step one. Then we started building out basic things in the app, which Craigslist still doesn't have. Like, how about a profile? Like, duh. Or like ratings. Do you show up when you say you're going to show up? Was the item as described? Were you, how were you? Like, so we do a lot of those kind of normal things you would see. We started doing a lot around item curation. And so, it's not that big a deal when you're small, but then you scale real quick, then it becomes an issue. And so, you name it. I've seen every body part, every drug, like you've seen it, every weapon. So eventually you have to crack down on those. And initially you do things very manually, and then you find ways to automate those. And today we're extremely sophisticated here. We do a lot of things, kind of leveraging kind of machine learning and image recognition, keywords. We're also very proactive, like with law enforcement. So, a few years ago, we trained 5,000 police officers in how to use and engage with OfferUp. Like we were renting out auditoriums, and we know like the head of the LAPD, right? So we started getting very proactive on these things. And the thing I would say overall for people that are skeptical on using local commerce is it pretty much rounds to zero. The amount of incidents you will find, it's not to say they don't happen, but given the amount of the number of transactions we have, it's super, 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 super low. And so it rarely happens. And the unfortunate thing is, you want to equip users and give them a safe experience, but you hope they leverage those tools. Sometimes they don't. So a good example I would say is like, would either one of you meet up at 3 a.m. at a bad part of town with $1,000 in cash on you? Probably not. But somebody did that and they got robbed. I said, why? Why did you do this? Right. So what are things you can learn from that? And because OfferUp is commerce wrapped around chat, we can do things like machine learning. We could see people talking, saying, hey, we're going to meet here at this time. And we can give warnings, in the app that say, we recommend that you might reconsider this. You might not want to go through this transaction. So there are things like that we constantly have focused on and to the end of time. Like I said, we've been working on, trust and safety and really, I think, innovating a lot in this space. We don't talk about it, unfortunately, that much or how much time and effort we put into it. But it's like, think about it. If you're the mayor of LA, it's a lot of pressure. Like there's no way you're going to eradicate crime, right? Given the scale of LA. But when you look at the size of OfferUp, like we're larger than any major city in the country, and we have to manage that as best we can too. So I think we do the majority of it. We try to do with machines and learn from that and be very smart and reactionary. Sometimes people report. That's another thing that we look to is, hey, our users will report other users quickly. They'll say, hey, this is fraudulent or something. And so people care about the community, which I really appreciate. And so, we react to those things, a lot too. But I've definitely learned a lot about some of the rougher neighborhoods in the US that I had no idea about until starting OfferUp, right? There's been neighborhoods I'm like, oh, it's a rough area there. And, it's kind of unfortunate because what you see sometimes more incidents may occur in those areas on OfferUp than they would say Bellevue. Like Bellevue is a very safe area to live. So it's just, we try to do as much as we can and try to be as proactive as we can here. And again, I think in the early days, I think that was an area that I just felt it was kind of sad that I just felt like Craigslist just never innovated in this space. They could have. They had all the tools to do it. I don't know why they didn't spend time to make it a better experience.
So let me ask you one quick follow-up question. So you saw a lot of stuff on OfferUp. What made you think, I can't, like, the most bizarre, weird thing that you saw, like, no way. I can see weapons. That's not, unimaginable, I suppose, right? and early on you might not have had cars, and now you have a lot of cars, etc. But what was one thing you said, no way somebody's putting this up?
Well, I'd say it's stuff that you wouldn't want to, like underwear or like used mattresses. Like nobody's gonna buy this stuff, and people do. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I'm sorry. Like when you're done with your underwear, just get rid of that. Like nobody, no one else needs to buy that. Yeah.
I can't believe people sell underwear. That's crazy.
I saw like my son's his crib with and the mattress was still on there, and I was gonna just dispose of it. And but again, some people really need it. Like it goes back to the value of OfferUp. They really need something,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so I was gonna get rid of the mattress. Like, no, we'll take that. I'm like, oh
yeah,
god, that's my son's been drooling over that thing for for
yeah,
years now.
yeah. You don't think about it, right? Because you're not only enabling commerce, but you're also satisfying a need.
Yeah,
And I mean, what was their other choice? Go to 20 Goodwills? They may not have the time. They may have two jobs. I mean, hey,
yeah,
isn't Bellevue? This guy got a good crib. I may never be able to buy a new one. Let me get this one. Put a sheet
yeah.
over it and then call it good.
Yeah, I've actually had a number of stories. I've done hundreds and hundreds of transactions, and I really enjoy the stories because you run into people that you realize I'm getting rid of something, and that's great. But then you get to hear from people how it's impacting them, and like, man, I could have never bought this brand new. And thank you so much for giving this to me, and just a lot of gratitude because they're able to get a really good deal, and that I always love seeing that.
Yeah. I started noticing during the COVID, people started side hustles on OfferUp. Either they got rid of their stuff,
Yeah,
or they, like your early days, they would buy from, because I moved somewhere during COVID, and then we would put stuff up because I don't want to take it with me. It's like on OfferUp, people would come and buy it. I'm looking at them thinking, there's no way you need a use for this thing, right? They live in an apartment and they're buying a full bedroom set. I'm like, really? And then
yeah,
it clicked for me. They were doing a whole side hustle because I didn't have the time or the inclination to, curate it, stage it, sell it at the highest price. There was arbitrage to be made. I said, oh, more power to you.
yeah.
That you really can find it.
That is a big growing segment on the marketplace for sure. People that
Mm.
find it and they arbitrage and they make money on that, and like you said, good for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So,
So you talked a little bit about competition from LetGo and Facebook and so forth, and then you merged later on with LetGo. Was that because you're concerned about competition from Facebook? And I'm just curious how you view Facebook as a competitor.
yeah. When you look at the U.S., I mean, the way I look at the kind of the battlefield now is you definitely have Facebook, and Facebook's got plenty of smart people there, a lot of size and scale, and people have definitely used Marketplace. Um, Craigslist is around, but I used to say only older folks use Craigslist, but not anymore. Like a lot of older folks use OfferUp now, but it's kind of a declining marketplace, and so we looked at the US and we said, well, we have LetGo. This definitely has some size and scale in other markets that we're not in. And we felt, man, this could be great to come together with them. Let's raise some additional capital and let's be the kind of the leader in local commerce as a standalone entity. And so that's kind of was the major thinking behind that is if we could come together and raise capital, we could really own this long term. And I believe, I've been in tech long enough. I believe the player that has a singular focus long term always wins. At one time, I think Zillow was scared that Google was going to kill it because they were doing all this real estate stuff. I think it's the same thing with Facebook. Facebook is definitely a competitor when it comes to buying and selling, but is this going to be a strategic focus of theirs long term? And are they going to go as deep as we're going to go into this experience? Because, like I said, we still have a lot of work to do as a company, and we think there's still a lot of friction and things that we could do to make it a better local experience. And so I think that was a lot of the thinking when it came time to kind of merge with LetGo is, hey, because is this an opportunity for 1 + 1 = 3 and really distance ourselves from anyone else? There was also, by the way, plenty of other smaller competitors that have always been lurking, but we really wanted to make sure that we were kind of the main standalone leader in the space.
Got it.
But the categorizations that you started doing right now, I see you have automobile. You didn't start with automobiles, right? You have other categories that you launched, and then also you have now built clearly in the household goods a lot of categories, right? Is there one that is driving liquidity at the moment? I mean, there's price of these items because there's 50-cent items and $500,000 item. I meant to show the vastness of your marketplace.
Yeah.
Is there any one category that drives liquidity now?
I think, overall, people come to OfferUp. I always say people come there to shop. They might be coming there for a car and they end up buying a couch. That's just kind of the nature of the experience. It is definitely has, you can use it for anything. You think of the things that do extremely well, though, probably not surprising. They're things that definitely skew local. So furniture is a monstrous category for us. Cars. I mean, we sold probably five plus million cars last year. Like we're probably one of the top places to sell cars in the country. Household goods is pretty common. Electronics, food, or sorry, not food, but clothing, things like that are pretty popular. So I don't think there's any one category that said, oh, this is why everyone comes here. But I definitely think probably not, like I said, not surprising. Things like furniture definitely skew more local. Like you're not going to put your couch up on eBay.
Yeah. But there are certain players who have come along just for certain categories, like car, eBay Motors, and there's definitely categories for clothing because you could ship it across, right?
Yep.
Across the country. Okay, put it in a box and ship it, etc. Has that been a thought process in your thinking, saying, hey, maybe we pick this and really get focused around these and drop those, or you still stick to the local domain? Now I see you can go trade. I mean, I see posts from outside of my area. If I let it be open, I could get theoretically shipped from New York something I buy. But there are clearly players now who have built marketplaces on used goods, but for one category, right?
Yeah.
And they are big companies. They have massive market. Was that ever a consideration during your journey, saying, hey, we're going to drive this because that's the volume?
No, I think overall, like I said, I think especially if you're doing a shipping type business, you got to go deep into a vertical, and that makes sense. And so you see vertical players in fashion, and like you said, for us, it was more about local, right? So it was about local liquidity, percentages of population using OfferUp. Like that's all I cared about. In terms of like product mix, it was more of, yes, we want to go deeper into categories and make it easier, but it was really holistic. Like we never said, oh, we're going to over-index and become the furniture only marketplace. Like instead, it was more of, we have to be the marketplace in LA, right? It was more about geography that we thought mattered, because our thinking was, over time, if we could get enough people using it, then we could keep building other businesses on top of this business. So I've always thought about this as a platform. And at the end of the time, I still believe if you keep removing friction, more people use it. I mean, there's still great, a third of LA uses OfferUp every month. That means there's 70% that don't. Well, why don't they use it every month? And there's various reasons, could be friction. Maybe they don't find an item that they want. There's all these other reasons. So how do we get after that, right? How do we remove friction? How do we make it easier for people? Because, I always think it's kind of it's crazy if you think about how much commerce has occurred in the last 30 years, especially in this world of Amazon. It's kind of a sad state that we're in, where it's easier to get an item delivered to you from China than it is down the street. That's just where we are.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to unlock all this value that it continues to grow around us.
Yeah.
But Nick, the challenge with local commerce is that it's very difficult to get in the middle of that transaction and take a cut. So how did you think about monetization from that perspective?
Yeah, it's a good point. So, we always focused, we said, well, let's build an audience and we'll scale and we'll monetize that audience via advertising. That was a lot of early revenue for us. The challenge with local and being in the middle of the transaction, it is a big one. And I believe in the US, I vent a lot about this to people, because I think it's kind of a sad state we're in when it comes to like local payments. Like if you go to China or even India, you realize how easy it is to pay for things. And
Yeah.
here in the US, like you just feel like an idiot when you go to the point of sale systems.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, you got to put the card in for that one. No, you got to do this one. Like it is ridiculous that how much time we spent just dealing with the archaic payment systems we have.
Yeah.
Or how many times do you go out to have dinner and you want to pay for your bill and you're sitting there waiting 15 minutes?
Yeah.
You don't do that in China,
Yeah.
right? And I felt like we need ways to do this, and so I think that's just the state of where we are right now. Unfortunately, in the U.S., is our payment infrastructure is antiquated. It's held up by the credit card companies. It's so fragmented, the POS systems. Like at the end of the day, we just need a QR code. That's
Yeah.
it. Like just have a QR code, scan it, pay, done.
Yeah.
And it's all this other stuff kind of gets in the way. And so I think the challenge with local payments, and this isn't just an OfferUp challenge, but in the U.S., is you have to build. It has, in China, they got the economics at such that it's so, it's so cheap to do the transactions now. And the government's really supported this, that, companies like, Alipay, they just kind of eat that because they make up for it, in other ways. Here in the US, it's like cost prohibitive. It's so hard to do. And if you want to do a local transaction, the government now says, well, I'm going to tax that again. So you're double taxing. Like you've already paid for this item, but now they're going to say, no, you got to pay for it again, right? Even though it's a used good. And so that's the biggest challenge, I think, for payments in the US. It's like, I would love to do local payments. I think it should be our future. And if you look at cash, like we hit peak ATM, I think last year, like cash is continuing to go down.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to get to a point somehow that it makes economic sense to make payments way more ubiquitous. But today, I look around the world, I'm like, we are so far behind when it comes to payments, and it's a big inconvenience. Like even standing there in the grocery store, like why are we all standing in line, waiting to pay anymore? Like it makes no sense. So again, I think we're talking about this under the umbrella of OfferUp, which I definitely would love to get after this more, but I'm just sharing my macro view of, I think, the bigger challenge that's out there.
Yeah, I thought, during COVID, you guys would get into the restaurant business because you're already local. I went go there for local commerce. Restaurant, as in the restaurants post their thing, and they have POSs and stuff like that, because people went there during COVID. There was a behavioral shift. People didn't go far to buy stuff. I wouldn't even go to Auburn if I had to buy something. I would just go to like Bellevue, stick to Bellevue, right? Because I didn't know who I was meeting. And I mean, the COVID drove behavioral change. And I thought, man, if I'm picking it up, I could order food and pick up my stuff at the restaurant. And because, restaurateurs have a love-hate relationship with their delivery partners, whoever they may be, doesn't matter, right? They have, and they just don't have scale to deliver on their own, but mostly they don't have infrastructure to sell on their own. That's more than...
Well, and if you look at the price we were paying too during COVID, it was absurd, right? Like I'd order a sandwich. I would sometimes sneak in OfferUp because I had the whole office to myself because no one was in there. So I'd be in there working by myself. And I'm starving. I need to order a sandwich. So I ordered like a $12 sandwich. By the time it got to me, it was like $27 or something.
It's an interesting opportunity. But it's as much as Uber might have solved payments for cabs, payments in general is still a pain. It's a huge pain. And I was stunned because I traveled to India after 3 years during the whole COVID and went this year. There was nothing I needed that I needed to ever pull out my card.
Yeah.
No transaction, no matter what the size was, right?
Yeah.
No transaction. And these what I call micro transactions, like you buy this, $10, $5, $20. Nobody. And every vendor, no matter what the size of, under $1, they're willing to accept a QR code.
Yeah.
Just blows me away. It blows me away. And I don't know if their taxation is any poor. I mean, they figure now they actually have better taxation. Track everything.
Yeah. I bought ice cream from a vendor on a bullet train in Shanghai. And I'm like, how do I pay you? And she didn't speak English. She just pointed on her tray. There was a QR code, and I luckily had enough money on my. I had the Alipay app, and I just went paid it. She was, here you go. I'm like, that was it. That was like 6-7 years ago, and I was like, this is what we need to go do. And like I said, it's the problem is there's too much taxation in that process to make it economically viable right now. And so until that changes, my worry is we're just going to be stuck in this state for a while.
Yeah.
All right, Nick. This was a fascinating conversation. A lot more to talk about, but we're limited in terms of time. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me. Enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for listening to the Startup to Exit podcast brought to you by TIE Seattle. Please consider rating and reviewing our podcast as it will help us to spread the word to more listeners. And don't forget to become a TIE member by visiting www.seattle.tie.org.